Hey guys, this here is Getaway Driver 101, and today I'm going to be giving y'all a video on how to do benchmarks with Windows if you have a new computer or even an old computer or even one that you just rebuilt. This is how to properly benchmark your CPU and graphics card. I'm not doing memory because, if there's a problem with your memory, your computer will blue screen on a Cinebench. Now, Also to note, Windows also has memory diagnosis. If you really want to go test your memory, it will tell you if there's an issue. But this is mainly for new computers or old computers. So you need Cinebench R23. So you go to Microsoft, you can download Cinebench here. You'll just search up. You can probably just type in R23, Cinebench R23, right there, Cinebench, and then once it's installed, you'll download it. Once it's downloaded, you'll open it. And then when you open it, this is what it's going to look like. Now you can use the small screen or the large screen, it doesn't matter. Now before you run this, I recommend going and getting Hitman 64, or not Hitman 64. I mean, you can get Hitman 64 if you want it. It's a second opinion scanner. If you're worried about malware or viruses and you're worried about your security not catching it. Now I do recommend going and getting a HW hardware monitor for monitoring your temperatures or whatnot. Now this here is how to properly benchmark a computer from start to finish. This is like the proper way of doing it where you don't hurt your equipment and you don't risk damaging your equipment. When you're benchmarking, if you're going for clock speeds and high scores, make sure you're running ultra performance to get your high clocks running. Don't be running balanced or you'll be stuck at the 7, 9, 80 megahertz for low when you're idling. And not only that, if you're running Intel, Intel voltages, for those that don't know, you got your CPU here, your CPU SA, and then CPU. The CPU main voltage should never exceed 5 point or 1.7. If it exceeds 1.7, your CPU can basically degrade or explode. Now AMD, and you're running X3D models of the 900X3D or the 700X3D CPUs. Be careful running overclocks on those as well because they're known with not necessarily a voltage problem, but they're known for a board socket issue. With the socket issue on those, I think it would be CPU socket, but they don't have a CPU socket voltage here. So I don't really know exactly what you would go by for the AMD issue on that for the X3D CPUs. But I believe you just go by the temperature. You just make sure you get a temperature monitor for your CPU socket if you're running overclocks. If you're not running overclocks, you should be fine. So let's go ahead and start. So you're going to start with a single core. When the single core launches, make sure it does this, that it launches the actual screen. And it's going to use the CPU and CPU only to render and basically register these one block by one block images. It also does other things too, but it's basically putting a lot of stress on the CPU. It's making the CPU understand like depth, distance, color, all kinds of stuff, and it's literally only doing it on the CPU. Now, if you're running integrated graphics, it may slow it down if you're running integrated. So if you don't have a dedicated GPU that you are running, it will still about 5% of your I wouldn't say overclock. It will still about 5% of your benchmark from everything else because your integrated graphics will use some memory and it will use some of the CPU the entire time to keep the monitor and everything running. So just note to self that if you are using integrated graphics, just as long as everything's running normal, you should be good. Another thing to watch while it's benchmarking, you want to go here to where your temperatures are, and you're going to scroll down and look for core temperatures. You're going to look for your processor or CPU name, and then you're going to open the cores and the temperatures for those, and you're going to monitor the temperatures. You want to make sure your temperatures don't exceed 90C. If they're exceeding 95C, That could be thermal throttle or even potential overheating. Now, what you should be checking for though is how long the exceedance is happening for. So if you're sitting at 70C, how long are them cores at 90C while the other ones are at 60 or 70? And now that may sound like, well, it should auto regulate. Yes, it should. But it's still something to monitor because you can have hot spots, and with hot spots can sometimes cause you to have a problem. Not a lot of people know that. Now, if you have a hot spot, you can repaste your thermal paste. Don't do that if it's just one core hitting a hot spot. Don't do that. If it's like 3 or 4 cores, if there's more than 2 cores hitting red, then you're gonna have to repaste your CPU. Now we're gonna go with multi-core. Now I recommend running the single core for a full 10 minutes on Intel or X3D. The multi-core, I recommend watching temperatures. Do not run it for the full 10 minutes if your temperatures exceed 100C. If you hit 100C, stop the run. The whole point in this is to make sure that the computer isn't going to blue screen on load. So you'll watch how fast 20 cores and 28 threads at 5 gigahertz, 5.6 to 5.7 gigahertz, is going to heat up. And see, it's already at 80. And it's not necessarily bad being at 80, but the problem with 80C is anything above 85C, you are in the 200 Fahrenheit range. You're in, not necessarily are, but in the range. So when you're in the 200 Fahrenheit range, you have your computer could heat up, your case could heat up, your memory sticks could overheat, resulting in RAM memory fail. Your CPU can go out faster. Now, as you can see, CPU voltage is only exceeded to 1.428, which is pretty good. That's not overvolting, I don't think. I know they're bringing out another microcode for some other changes. I don't know if the changes are going to be related to the CPU AUX, which that does look a little high, but I honestly don't know. I I think from what I understand, this is supposed to be running 1.780 and it's running 1.832 or 1.812. So I think this is supposed to be dropped by like 100th of a millivolt or something like that. I don't really quite understand how voltage drops work. That's why I don't really do undervolting, because you can damage your hardware undervolting if you have no idea what you're doing. Now, if you understand how voltage and everything works, I understand how wattage works. I know they're very similar, but they're not. They're similar, but they're not. So you got to be very careful that wattage and voltage is different. Wattage is like when it's being loaded and in extreme use, your wattage goes up, but your voltage stays kind of around the same, you know. And it's wattage is just very, very different from voltage. So that's also something to keep in mind. Definitely make sure your 3.3 are always staying in 3.3s. Your 5.5s are always staying at least pretty close to 5.5. If it drops down to 4.5 or lower than 4.5, you will blue screen. 12 volt. If you drop any lower than 11.5, you can blue screen. So this is how you can check for a bad power supply. If my power supply was going out, it would be down at like 4.2, 4.5, more of the area lines of where the board is like starting to power surge. And that's where you get into where your keyboards start losing power, your mouse starts acting up or not wanting to work correctly. So this is just something to know, that if you're dropping below basically below 4.5 volt on your 5 volt, you're gonna experience lots of bugginess, if not a blue screen or a critical error. Hopefully, if you see that, I would shut down the computer and order a new power supply. But a 1.3 should be constant. This should be 5 volts constant. This should be 12 volts constant. This here is for the motherboard and graphics card communications for the PCIe's, I believe, and I believe this here is for the USBs and all the additional ports. I also believe this one's also included with fans. On the fan scenario, and then the CPU is its own. Like there would be the actual graphics card. But the graphics card is actually up here, which is only doing 0.935. So I think this here would be the Intel internal graphics. I don't really quite understand what that is either. But the CPU, anyways, you want to make sure your voltages are 3.35 and 12. Don't let this go below 4.5. If it goes below 4.5, you're going to have a problem. Now we're going to move on to Heaven Benchmark. Before I open Heaven Benchmark, God, don't ever run 2 benchmarks at once or your computer will blue screen. It does not matter if it's top of the line. If you attempt to run 2 benchmarks at once, they're both considered high priority programs, as 2 high priority programs initialize with a medium priority program, which would be basically Windows and everything else that's going on in the background would be in either low or medium state, while this is in high priority state. You have medium, low, 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 and high, and you launch another high, then you have 2 highs, a medium, a low, and a low running, and the next thing you know, the computer's like, wait a minute, 2, 2, and 2, boop, and then it goes blue screen. So it's just something to be aware of. Don't ever run 2 benchmarks at once. You will experience a problem. I mean, I've never done it, but there are people out there that don't really know a whole lot about computers and think that when one thing is at 100%, and this is at 7% or 5%, that they can go and launch another thing while the other one's at 100%. That's not how that works. There are some people that, for some reason, do that, and I don't quite understand. So, Heaven Benchmark now. So we ended the other benchmark. Now the goal is to make sure that your FPS is at least 100 FPS at all times. Mine is usually 104 to 108 to 280 to 477 or 790. So my FPS is like anywhere between 700 and 100. But the 90% of the time is between 100 and 200 FPS. The 20% of the time it would be between like 5 and 700, and that's only on load screens, you know. So like just make sure that your FPS is at least stable, your monitor's got no screen tearing, no lines going through it, you don't see no jitters or glitching. Small little graphical things you should watch out for. If you see like any shadow staircasing effects, don't worry about that. That's not that big of a deal because this is an old program. The thing you should be watching more for is like whether or not if the colors themselves are syncing up, like all the green, or if the outer part of the world where the light is not like bright, is for some reason, like if it starts having issues with brightness or if it starts pixelating. Any reason for pixelation or God ray issues, you know, things like that you should definitely watch for, especially lines or coloration problems with flickering reflections having problems. This is what this tool is for, is to resolve graphics card bugs. So if you're experiencing graphics card issues or screen problems in general, it may be related with your graphics card. I would probably wipe your drivers or reinstall them, or go directly to the website and reinstall them from the website. The website will more than likely give you the newest version and a functional version. Now, let's say you experience an issue that I experienced on a recent computer that was not mine, it was another computer that I was working on, where you install, let's say, AMD software update, and it says, sorry, something went wrong. And you keep clicking update, and it keeps giving you that error. And then let's say you restart the computer continues to work fine. You go to, let's say, run the AMD cleanup tool from their wherever their website has that. I don't really mess with a whole lot of AMD stuff, but apparently from what I hear, the AMD cleanup tool is like a DDU wiper that goes in and wipes the display management drivers and basically wipes them completely off the computer as if they never existed. Um, Problem with that, if you run any such cleanup tool from them, that may wipe out your internet drivers, and if your account is not a local account, it may cause problems trying to log into Windows. So be very careful if you are dealing with driver problems. Back your computer up before you attempt anything. Even if the computer is already somewhat broken, back it up anyways. At least as long as you can log in, it's fixable. But if for some reason your login menu breaks, you're going to have a very tough time getting back into Windows to repair a bug that was caused from a graphics card update or a Windows update. Drivers from graphics cards can basically, they can kind of act like a virus in a way if the graphics card gets so out of date that the computer doesn't recognize it correctly, but yet it's still functioning. The computer starts going into basically like manic mode. Basically just starts malfunctioning. Just starts going manic. It starts just going crazy. It doesn't want to respond. It doesn't want to open apps, or maybe it starts doing other things, or even blue screens every time it turns on. The computer I was working on whenever I did the AMD update from the website, I got it installed. Everything seemed to work fine, and then it was like a few days went by, it had another update, and I didn't know they were going to drop another update right off the bat, and the AMD tool was working correctly, where you go in and you can look at all your metrics and graphics settings, basically like NVIDIA control panel. It's basically the same thing, but it's like an AMD 64 type app. Anyways, the point to it is that when I installed the app and the drivers for the computer, it started to have static through videos on YouTube. But everything else worked fine, had normal sound, everything sounded fine. So I was like, oh, well, maybe it's just Microsoft Edge. So I emailed Microsoft about it, let them know some things, and left it at that. Got an update, seemed like it was somewhat fixed. Didn't have any issues with it for a while. The so-called new update wouldn't install. So I went and uninstalled the NVIDIA, or not the NVIDIA, the AMD drivers. Well, when I uninstalled the AMD drivers on the other computer, the AMD drivers decided to basically malfunction and blue screen the computer. When the computer booted back up, the had no drivers to log into Wi-Fi, so I figured, okay, let me plug it up to the Ethernet. Plug it up to Ethernet, use a TCP link bypass. I've used it on my computer, and to bypass the network driver so it would install its own driver. Well, what I found out happened is it activated the kill switch in the security. When it activated the kill switch in the security would not let Windows log in. Like, it physically blocked Windows out and told Windows it was malicious, like the whole operating system. And it was weird. So it was like, you couldn't connect to Wi-Fi. You hit, reset pin or log in with pin, and all of a sudden it would go to try to load Microsoft's website, and then the computer would blue screen and shut down. And it was the kill switch. The computer kept trying to get on the internet. It kept trying to turn on its Wi-Fi driver, which it was considering high priority. Well, Windows was still booting up, considered high priority boot. So a high priority boot strip on high priority boot load, once it's loaded, it's no longer a high priority. So high priority boot load, high priority security activated, and then Windows is like blue screen. And it's was very difficult to fix. I had to go into BIOS. I had to unplug the graphics card from the actual computer and go into BIOS, and then go get a Windows installation media chip, and then run Windows from that, from BIOS, told it to boot from BIOS from M.2 to USB to bypass M.2. It was a pain. It was about a 4-hour fix. Once I got all that done and I got it to bypass M.2 back to USB, so it would launch from USB and boot the computer from USB and USB only, nothing else. Then from there, I told the USB to install Windows again on the same drive that it was installed on. Keep all files but remove all third-party applications. It fixed the computer. The computer got its in. It fixed everything. It was just a security glitch, and the reason why I figured out it was a security glitch was because of Malwarebytes was on the computer, which I have the premium security version, and then with it being premium security, a kill switch. The kill switch I don't even recall activating because I don't really leave it active on my computer because kill switches can sometimes be problematic. The whole point in a kill switch on a security program is for as it sounds, it's when let's say you're playing in a server and somebody threatens to boot you offline, you go and activate the kill switch. If they boot you offline, the kill switch rebounds the same boot back. They will still knock you offline, but it will knock them offline too. They'll basically end up disconnecting you and disconnecting themselves. They disconnect you, they disconnect themselves. That's literally what a kill switch does. They disconnect you, it disconnects them. And it's not necessarily like, you're attacking them. The security does it. The security, all it does it says, oh, okay, they're pinging, and kill switch is like, okay, ping, 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 rebound back, kill Wi-Fi, and then it rebounds, kills Wi-Fi, all in the same instance, without letting them physically hurt your Wi-Fi driver. So it doesn't corrupt your Wi-Fi driver. You're able to get your Wi-Fi driver back up and running just by going in and turning off kill switch, reconnecting, turning kill switch back on, and you're good. And you get a new IP address too from doing that. So every time you do that, you're getting a new DNS server and IP address. So every time they attempt to knock you offline, they're not even going to be able to get your IP. So that's something to keep in mind. You want good security, benchmark it, and you should be good to go. Hitman 64 is what I use as a second opinion scanner. I hope this helped y'all out with understanding the problems with maybe your computer or issues with your computer to help get your computer back up and running. Machines are machines. They do weird things. You never know. Thanks for watching. Like or subscribe.